A big news coming in this morning on the Israel-Hamas war. Israeli cabinet has decided to go ahead and possibly take a decision on the hostage deal. Israel's cabinet has approved an agreement to secure the release of, at least for now, 50 hostages who were abducted into the Gaza Strip and had been in Hamas captivity since the 7th October terror onslaught. The cabinet has approved the deal, however, for return of for 50 hostages for a multi-day ceasefire and possibly return and free the Palestinian prisoners as well in exchange for the women and children. Remember, we are talking about in total 240 hostages, and not just Israelis. Remember, there are Americans, Thai, Nepalese hostages as well. There are many other nationalities and ethnicities, including women, children. There is a child who is barely 10-month-old by the name of Kufir with his mother. They are currently in captivity since 7th October. There is, of course, pressure that was also building on Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that while the ground offensive had been on, hostages was where there was no clarity on. Rajesh Pawar is joining me now from Israel. He's in Tel Aviv presently. He's been non-stop covering the Israel-Hamas war. How should one see this? You've been speaking to a lot of families, Rajesh, whose family members, children, women have been kept in captivity of Hamas. What does this hostage deal mean? What will it be in exchange of, in return of, and who possibly will include in these 50 hostages? What is the pattern? Over to you, Rajesh.
Look, this has been going on for a long time now. These families of hostages have been putting tremendous pressure on Netanyahu government to somehow make a deal with Hamas. They said no matter what, government has to do whatever it takes. They must bring their near and dear ones back. They said if there needs to be a ceasefire, if there need to be exchange of prisoners, anything which government has to do, government must do. And somehow now we see that Netanyahu government has buckled under this pressure, and there were kind of cracks in the public opinion in Israel. The unity which we saw, the solidarity, the coming together of all Israeli people after 7th October attacks, it somehow seems to be cracking now. There were protests which say ceasefire now. And now it has resulted in this, what we saw now. And it's not only that there are babies which are 9 months or 1 year old. There has been a birth also. There was a woman who was pregnant and she gave birth probably to a child 2 weeks back as per the families of the hostages. And what we know now is, as of now, 4 days ceasefire will be announced, which will come into effect 24 hours from now. That is a legal angle, because most of these people who will be released by the Israeli government are convicted terrorists, convicted for the murder of Israeli citizens.
Shocking.
So if any citizen of Israel who wants to represent against this in the Supreme Court can do so in these 24 hours.
That's interesting. What you're telling us, Rajesh, this is what a democracy also is about, that despite all that going, they are still giving an option to anyone who has a say in this process. And that's what Israel has been about. But remember, there's been a lot of pressure, specifically with regard to hostages who've not been able to be recovered in this ground offensive. Rajesh, I request you to stay on with me.